I'm in Herringfleet in Suffolk, and Herringfleet is the furthest back I've got when I've been researching the Leggett family history in the early 1700s. And Herringfleet's a village where it has a parish church, a couple of houses and a couple of farms, and that's it. So if it's that basic today, what was it like in the early 1700s when the Leggetts lived here? So I'm at the parish church. It's a bit of a rainy day, so forgive me, because I'm trying to dodge the rain. We're just going to have a quick look at the church. So this is the parish church of St Margaret, Herringfleet, and it dates back to Saxon times, probably around about the 900s, and it's got a part thatched roof now, but in its day it would have been all thatched. So let's go and see if the door's open and have a look inside. Okay, so this is the inside of St Margaret's, Herringfleet, and this is where my family, my ancestors, some of them were married here, some of them were christened here, and even some of them buried here. So as far back as I've got with the Leggett family history, it goes back to a Samuel Leggett, who was born in 1737. I don't have any record that he was baptised here, but I know that in 1781 he was married here to an Esther Stone. So it's hard to believe that my 4 times great-grandparents got married here, walked up this aisle, and then back out through the door. Now Samuel and Esther Stone had 5 children that I know of, 3 boys and 2 girls. Now concentrating on the male line, there was a Samuel who was baptised here in 1786, James, who was baptised in 1788, and John, my 3 times great-grandfather, who was, I can't say he was baptised here because I've never found any record of his baptism in the parish registers here. But here's the font where any baptisms would have taken place. Now Samuel, my 4 times great-grandfather, he actually died here in Herringfleet and was buried out in the graveyard outside in 1807, aged 70 years. I don't, however, have any record of where his wife was buried because I could not find her in the registers. So that was my 4 times great-grandfather, Samuel. Now my 3 times great-grandfather, John, his son, was married here in October 1813 to a Hannah Hood. And although they were married here, they didn't seem to live in Herringfleet. They lived about a mile away from here in another village called Ashby, where they had 9 children. And just have a look around the church just before we leave it. I love these old churches. And out here in these rural places, they leave the churches unlocked because there's no fear of any vandalism. So, 4 times great-grandfather Samuel Leggett and Esther Stone married here. And 3 times great-grandfather John married Hannah Hood here. Just imagine them walking up the aisle together after they've been pronounced man and wife. I've gone through all the parish registers for this church, and I've got all the information that I could find on the Leggetts, but it seems in order to get further back from Samuel, my 4 times great-grandfather, I have to look elsewhere. There was a Henry Leggett who was born probably about 10 years before my 4 times great-grandfather Samuel. So that wouldn't make Samuel Henry's son, but I'm pretty sure that there's some connection. And if I could just find that connection, it would take me back several more generations. Because in this church, Henry, who was married to a Mary, not in here but at Loddon, they also had a number of children that lived in this general area. So there's definitely a Leggett link. So I'm going to leave the church now. These big oak doors. When I first came here in the 70s, I went round every gravestone in this cemetery but couldn't find any Leggetts. But what I do know is that Samuel, my 4 times great-grandfather, was buried here. He died in 1807, and the burial register for this church shows him as being 70 years old, which would have made him being born in 1737. Step out into the rain again, stand under this tree. So, Samuel Leggett, my 4 times great-grandfather. Don't know where you were born, but I know you were married here in this church. And I know you came to rest in this cemetery. So what we'll do now, we'll move on to one of Samuel and his wife Esther's sons, John. Let this car go. He was my 3 times great-grandfather. And he ended up living and getting married in the nearby village of Ashby. Oh, what I forgot to mention was that he was actually married in this church as well. So my 3 times great grandfather John, who married a Hannah Hood in 1813, was married here, but they didn't have any of the children baptised here. So John and Hannah Hood lived most of their married life just across the fields from here in the village of Ashby, which we'll go and have a look at next. Okay, so we're now in Ashby, about a mile and a half away from Herringfleet, and while I was at Herringfleet I mentioned about my 4 times great grandfather Samuel, and one of his children was John, my 3rd times great grandfather, and he came to Ashby with his wife Hannah. So this is Ashby with an A, and it's even a smaller village than what Herringfleet was, because there is virtually no village as you think of a village. It is just a cluster of houses around a farm. But the church we're going to visit is through the fields and through the gate, in about 5 minutes walk in that direction. So we'll start walking that way. So just before we start heading to the church, just have a quick look around here, because these are the houses that John and Hannah and all the 9 children probably lived in the early 1800s. And this is Ashby. Okay, so we'll head towards the church. So I'm about 300 yards along the path, and you can just see the church in the distance there. It's quite hard to believe that I'm walking along the path that my ancestors would have walked 200 years ago along here, working the fields along the side of this path. So let's carry on. So about half a mile along the path we finally reach the parish church of St Mary Ashby, and this church is literally in the middle of nowhere. It's through farmers' fields, it's in beautiful Suffolk countryside, and I've never normally, when I've been here in the past, seen anybody here, but this morning I bumped into people walking the dogs. A farmer's just gone past on his 4x4, but there's also a car parked in the grounds, which we'll just take as it comes. So this is the church where John, my 3 times great grandfather, and his wife Hannah Hood are buried, and so are some of the children. So I know which graves they are, and I'm going to put a little offering on them today as well. Well, certainly onto the main one where I believe John and Hannah are buried. So let's go into the cemetery, and then we'll have a look inside the church if it's open. So the church, first of all, is early Saxon. It dates back to roughly around 800 or 900 AD, and it's got a thatched roof, and I've been in here before. The doors are normally open, so hopefully they'll be open today. And let's go and find the Leggett graves. I know these here with the crosses are 2 Leggett graves. And this one, I believe, here Okay, to the memory of James Leggett, son of John and Hannah Leggett, who died 24th of July 1834, aged 16 years. And although you can't read it now, there's a poem engraved into the stone. And from memory, I know the first bit of it. It starts off, I drove a team, the horse was young, to manage him I tried. A bramble crossed my path, I fell, the wheels they pressed my side. So this is also the grave I believe John and Hannah, my 3 times great grandparents, are buried in, although there's no mention on the stone. So let me just quickly have a look at some of the other graves I know that are here. This one, sacred to the memory of Mary Ann, the beloved wife of John Leggett, and also John Leggett is buried in there. Now John Leggett was one of John and Hannah's sons. He was born in 1821 here in Ashby and got married to Mary Ann and had the children here. And just over here with the crosses, I think it's these two. So we've got William Keeble, who was a grandson of John and Hannah, and Edith Eliza, his sister. Neither of them married from memory. So what I'm going to do, on the one I believe where John and Hannah are, I'm just going to place some flowers. So just bear with me. Okay, there you go. To all the Leggetts in this cemetery, not just to John and Hannah. I put these flowers on this grave to respect and remember you all. And the flowers are not just from me, but all the Leggetts that are surviving here today. Okay, let's have a look in the church. The door is open. I think something might be going on today because some flowers are being placed in the church. Hello, can I come in and have a look around?
Please do. Excuse me.
That's okay, I'm just doing a video recording because I've got ancestors buried here.
Oh no, please.
And I was doing a video for the family back home.
Do you want me to step out?
No, you carry on with what you're doing. It's fine. I have been in the church before, many years ago.
Yeah.
But I've just come and placed some flowers on one of the graves just as an offering to show some respect. I'm going back 200 years, mind you. It's not recent.
Well, it's the thought that counts.
It is, yeah. So just ignore me if you hear me talking to myself. I'm just doing a bit of a commentary.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
That's okay. Okay, so here I am in this beautiful old Saxon church at Ashby. And it's quite hard to believe that 200 years ago the Leggett ancestors walked up and down this aisle. John and his wife Hannah, my 3 times great grandparents, were both buried here, so there would have been a service in here for them. And also there were children of theirs that were married in here. So one of John and Hannah's 9 children was a William Leggett. He was born here in Ashby in 1832, baptised in this church, and he was the last of John and Hannah's children. And it's him we're going to follow next into Lowestoft. But before we do, we'll just go over to Lound and some other nearby areas where the Leggetts lived as well. So just to recap, at Herringfleet, my 4 times great-grandparents, Samuel and Esther Stone, were there. One of the children was John, who married Hannah Hood there, and they came over here to Ashby. And then one of their children was William, my 2 times great-grandfather, and it's him we're going to follow next. So we're in Lound, just about 1.5 miles away from Ashby, and this is another small village, a bit bigger than the last ones, because this one does have its pub, and it would have had its post office at one time and village shops, and it's got this beautiful lake with ducks. Now the connection here is John Leggett, who was the son of Henry and Mary. Remember when I was at Herringfleet, I said there was a family who I couldn't tie into my Leggett line? Well, one of Henry and Mary's sons was John, who married a Mary Gillings, and they brought up their family here in Lound. But also John and Hannah, where we've just been in Ashby, one of their sons was baptised here as well. Okay, so we're just going to go about 1/2 mile up the road to the parish church, because that's where Henry and Mary, who were from Herringfleet, are actually buried along with other Leggetts. So this is St John the Baptist Church in Lound. We'll just go and see, while nobody's about, whether it's open, and we'll have a quick look inside here as well. Okay, well, very luckily the door was open, as they do with all the churches round here. And this is different again from the church at Herringfleet and Ashby. This is much bigger. And again, back in history, the Leggetts would have walked along this aisle, sat in these pews. So peaceful in these churches, very spiritual, nice energy. And the history. So a lot of the gravestones here are totally unreadable. They've decayed over the years. But as I say, Henry and Mary, who were originally from Herringfleet, Henry died and was buried here in 1806, age 83, and his wife Mary, she died in 1780 and was buried here. So although I don't have any connection for Henry and Mary to my own Leggett line, to me there's no doubt that there is somewhere with them a family connection. So what we're going to do now is go over to Lowestoft, the big fishing town, and we're going to look at where my great-grandfather William Frederick was born, with his parents William and Elizabeth, who moved from Ashby eventually to Lowestoft. Okay, so I'm now in Lowestoft, the actual port of Lowestoft, and in its day, the time the Leggetts were down here in the 1800s, it would have been a busy fishing port, and really since we joined the EU, fishing has been decimated and there's very little goes on here now, fishing. Now William and Elizabeth, they had the first son, Herbert, in Gelderston, just south of Norwich, and then in 1861 they moved here to Lowestoft, and they moved on to Tonning Street and lived at number 49. Now William got a job in the Lowestoft Ice House, which was just to the left of the river. No trace of it left there now, but roughly alongside where that small boat is moored. So the Lowestoft Ice House made ice for the shipping industry, for the fishing industry, and William was a labourer there. And on the 5th of November 1881 he was at work sweeping sawdust away, and he was sweeping some sawdust from over some planks which were covering the ice wells, and unfortunately they gave way under his weight and he fell down the ice wells and fractured his skull. He was taken to Lowestoft Infirmary, where he died a short time later. And that must have been devastating for Elizabeth and her children, because she had 10 young children, the youngest 5 that she then had to bring up on her own. So what we'll do, we'll just have a look at some other landmarks here in the town centre, and then we'll have a look at number 49 Tonning Street where they live. Okay, so this is Tonning Street in Lowestoft, where in the 1860s, around about 1861, William and his wife Elizabeth Deary came to live here, and they came to live at that house there, the one where the black pin is, number 49. And it was there where they brought up the 10 children. And it was unfortunate that while living there, that in 1881 William had his accident at the ice house and sadly died. And Elizabeth was left on her own to bring up 10 children, the youngest one just being 5 years old. So when William and Elizabeth were living at number 49, the house would have looked slightly different then. It's obviously been extended in recent years. But to have 10 children in a 2 up, 2 down house must have been pretty cramped. So what we'll do now, we'll head over to St Margaret's Church, to the burial ground of both William and his wife Elizabeth. So following William's tragic death in 1881, he was buried here in the churchyard of the parish church of St Margaret in Lowestoft. Now the part of the churchyard around the church still has all the old gravestones standing, but the part where William and his wife Elizabeth are buried is actually in this part over here. Now I came here in late 1970s, and this was just a mass of gravestones that I did find it. And then when I came again, they'd removed a lot of them, but I did actually find it. So I've got a rough idea where I'm going. So just bear with me, because it is somewhere along here. It's that long ago since I came. Sure it was around here. Okay, so I don't believe what I'm seeing here, because the gravestone where I knew it was has actually gone. And if you can look at what they've done here, is disgraceful. They've just taken gravestones, lined them all up side by side, and used them to border off dumping waste cuttings. So the gravestone now could actually be anywhere whatsoever. Okay, I don't like what they've done in here. I'm going to just go back over here and have another scan around, because it was over here. Okay, I feel quite sad about all this, because whilst this looks to be just a field, plain field, underneath the grass are graves. And I know for a fact that the grave of William and Elizabeth was round about here. There was a tree that was growing behind it, which was one of these. So it looks like the gravestone could be anywhere now in this cemetery. So because I can't find the grave, I'm going to insert a photo of it that I took when I first came here in the late 1970s, and I think I also took another one on my second visit, so I'm going to insert them into this video. Okay, so this is Mariners Street, just off High Street, and I remember coming here in the late 1970s, and it seemed totally different then than what it is now. Now the connection with Mariners Street is that when my great-grandfather married Mary Charlotte Cooper, my great-grandmother, they moved on to Mariners Street in the late 1880s, and my grandfather, William Frederick, was born on here in 1888, and William Frederick Sr. and Mary Charlotte Nee Cooper had 3 children here before they moved to Liverpool in 1891. Now, strangely enough, on Mariners Street, there was another William Leggett at the same time, and I found out that he lived at number 38, although for my own family there was no numbers on the birth certificates as to where they lived. So I don't know whether my William Frederick Leggett, my great-grandfather, whether he was related to this other William that lived here. But this William that lived here I've traced back to being from the Henry and Mary, who lived in Herringfleet, who, when I was there, I said that they weren't directly related to us because I couldn't find the link. So totally different today than it was in the 1880s, 1890s when there was houses on here. So this pub, last time I was down here, was called the Mariners, but it's called Bayfields now. Doesn't really look as though it's open. But in the late part of the 1800s, Mariners Street would have gone right through beyond those new buildings at the end. And this really concludes the part of my research that's in Lowestoft. So from here we're heading north and up to Liverpool. So see you then.